Here is the main challenge. Sometimes we say if you have an issue with the buffering of a video, it can be annoying. But on a mission-critical network, if a push-to-talk takes half a second too long, it can affect a matter of life and death. It's very important to help assess the services that are important for the mission-critical setup. And it can be different from the normal public networks setup and KPIs and priorities.
Did you know?
Did you know that the type of 5G network your phone connects to can make a double-digit difference to your battery life? Same phone, same apps, just a different connection. How big is the difference? And what kind of 5G do you need? Listen to the whole episode to find out. So, my name is Ginn. I'm the host of Digitel Talk. I'm delighted to have as our guest Susie Siouti from SmartViser, who I've known for more than 10 years. Susie leads the commercial activities at SmartViser. Welcome to the podcast, Susie.
Thank you, Ian. Yes, it's lovely to be here. And it's hard to believe, actually. We've known each other for 10 years now. Time does fly.
And can you introduce yourself and your company, please?
Absolutely, yes. I'm Susie Siouti and I'm the Chief Commercial Officer for SmartViser. I've been working over nearly 24 years in telecoms, working with mobile operators, device manufacturers, and also other technology partners across the world. And SmartViser is a French company, and we're specializing in test automation and also monitoring of devices, networks, any type of networks, private, public, mission critical, and non-terrestrial, using real devices. And our mission is simple. So we want to ensure that the devices people use on a daily basis and increasingly the networks that try to connect, that's supporting emergency services or day-to-day activities, deliver the best possible end-user experience. So we just want to make sure from the moment you try to make a phone call that everything will work as expected.
You're suggesting it doesn't always, but I guess that is the reality of things, right?
Yes, exactly. It is. We do know, and I think there's been a lot of examples across the industry that we do have sometimes situations when not everything works according to plan.
And how long SmartViser been in the market?
So SmartViser was founded in 2014. So this is our 14th year. So it's a fairly young company.
So as you say, I think it was early days that we initially met each other. But I think, I've been watching you for all that time, I guess, and seeing how you progress and seeing how the company is moving on. One of the things I think which is a highlight and maybe where you've created some sort of game-changing pioneering work is about smartphone or battery life. Is that a fair statement or?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is definitely a fair statement. And I think maybe this is one part of our story and not our whole story. But for sure, SmartViser, we have a very, very key differentiator and maybe value added to the battery performance. So due to our Visor test automation, so it's an application, it can be installed on an Android and an iOS. We have started working very early on with a lot of media like GSM Arena, Frandroid, Les Numériques, that they were looking to assess battery performance to help end users make an informed decision. And also maybe some topics that no one talks about, mobile network operators perform a lot of battery testing on their networks to check the impact. And we have been working with them very early on to assess what is the impact of the network in the devices and also to help media perform different benchmark on devices. We have seen there's a lot of fragmentation in the industry. I mean, it was very difficult to understand and do a true comparison. Manufacturers used some different ways of assessing battery performance. They used some items in a silo like standby figures or call time figures, and that caused a little bit maybe of confusion in the market. And maybe something you may not know, SmartViser at that time, we've identified a gap in the market and we've created our own label, ViserMark, almost 8 years ago, just to solve that issue. And ViserMark was long before EU. We even had an energy label. So how power efficient was a device? So I think your statement is definitely true. So we definitely brought a lot of innovation in assessing battery and efficiency and endurance on smartphone devices.
As I think you were saying, I mean, lots of people are doing device testing, but I think that was a sort of USP. And I think, as you've already alluded to, is that if I understand it correctly, this became, well, you had your own standard, if you like, in your own, I guess, quality labeling, but basically there's now has been adopted by the EU. Is that, can you share with the audience what's happened there with that whole piece of work?
Absolutely, yes. And I think maybe this underpins some of the work with the EU. So the European Commission were looking for a more transparent, repeatable and independent methodology to measure the battery life performance and efficiency. So it's something they were investigating since 2020, and they were looking for possible solutions in the market and what would be the best methodology. We were approached by EU in 2021, so it's almost 5 years ago to date, to help them with that methodology. And what they did a pan-European study on how people use the devices. So how long do they spend on calls? How long do they spend browsing or gaming? And based on that, they were looking to create a test methodology. And this underpins SmartViser's methodology for ViserMark, what we call the day of use. So rather than taking items in a silo, we had a day of use with different applications. So this was refined to meet the EU data they had collected. So it was a really important data on the usage. So we refined that to show what's the average user use the device. And the test methodology was created around 2021, 2022.
And where are we now in relation to that, as you say, you had the initial meeting with them and they've obviously adopted it. And of course, as you say, when you think about it, actually that benchmark as to what does it mean to use a smartphone or a phone is actually quite detailed piece of work, you know, how what's heavy usage or whatever. So interesting stuff. And what's happened to that? Has that now become a standard in the market?
So what happened at that time? We've asked to create the first beta application, and we did. So that was around 2022, and 2024 we had the first pilot application. The regulation is now mandatory as of June 2025. So there is a mandatory regulation. Any device in Europe, smartphone device or a tablet device, will need to have the energy label. And at the moment, we're continuing some standardization work with ETSI, which is the European Technical Standard Institute. And I think there's a lot of different partners participating on that work and to make the regulation into an official standard. And the standard will become available once the work is finalized. So there's still work in progress. There's not expected major changes, but there will be an official standard following the regulation.
So that's interesting. So the standard will follow after but we've already got the regulations. So in a way, there is a standard. So there already is a standard. Okay, well, maybe that's more details on maybe future proofing, I guess, of things. But what effect have you seen an effect here on the market in the sense of, I mean, I guess by definition, by it now becoming a consumer requirement, I presume device manufacturers in their design and development maybe are paying more attention. Have you seen a change in let's say the battery lives of devices and the type of devices coming in the market? Can you share on that a bit more on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for consumers, it's definitely brought more transparency because now they can compare like for like. So I think this is definitely a big improvement. We also see manufacturers investing, as you said, a lot more time in optimizing the battery performance, and because there's a lot of effort to show that. And of course, that is definitely good for consumers and manufacturers. And also, And I've discussed that a few years ago during IFA. So we were part of a panel discussion at that time. So this was around 2022. We were observing a trend that manufacturers simply increasing the battery size of a product. Every year there was a new model, always had a bigger battery size than the previous model. But what we've seen, and for me, this is one of the biggest impact, is that we had either a slowdown or a static. And I can mention maybe one manufacturer that I think they've done a lot of effort on that, Samsung. For example, their model in 2021, which was the S21, had a battery size of 4,000 milliamp. The device that they released last year with the Samsung S25 also had a battery of 4,000 milliamp. So, and I think this is a great achievement. They've maintained the battery size around 4,000 milliamp. Of course, on the standard model, there is some different models, but at least the standard model hasn't varied. And of course, bigger batteries have more natural resources usage. So I think this is a really good win in the industry. It was definitely one of the ones that is very clearly observable. It's almost slightly, maybe not fully reversed, but we slow down the trend that let's put a big battery size. And I remember there was something in 2021 or 2022 devices with 7,000 milliamp. And I'm glad this is, it hasn't become a trend that we don't see it more often. Is that there's a real effort from R&D to optimize rather than simply increase the battery size.
You remind me of the old brick days, the first phones.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, you have to change your pocket size or the size of your handbag, I guess, would be a consequence of that.
Today's episode is sponsored by IFG Consulting Europe, who help operators to tap into technologies to accelerate digitization of the network, drive revenues, and reduce costs by championing promising software providers in telecoms, enterprise, and mobile markets. Go to ifgconsultingeurope.com to find out more.
But if just finish on that Samsung story, can you share, because you're saying one version was 2021 and now 25, 26. How much more efficient? You said the battery is the same, let's say, amount of power in that battery, but how much longer does it on the same test, I guess, last? How much more efficient is it?
So what we have seen is the efficiency is actually improving. I cannot recall on top of my head the figures for this particular Samsung devices, but for SmartViser, we did some analysis year per year. And for example, when the regulation was first came out, before it became even mandatory, we have seen a real effort from manufacturers to optimize, meaning the battery size to use it in the most efficient way. And at that time, we had a lot of devices averaging between class C and class D in the energy labeling scheme. And the following year, we have seen a really big improvement. So they all moved around B, C, and we start seeing the first devices achieving class A. So this showed a real push in the industry and a real effort to improve and optimize rather than increasing the battery size. So for the energy labeling, increasing the battery size without increasing the battery duration, it will penalize you. So you need to make sure that every single milliamp on your battery is utilized on the best possible way. So in the market, we've definitely seen a trend in improving. And I think that was the outcome.
And are the device manufacturers allowed to self-certify, or is there a sort of formal process where a third party like yourself and the tests, coming back to the test methodology, is that somehow, how's that dealt with? How's that managed?
So manufacturers can self-certify. So this is a fully self-certification scheme at the moment. So it may change in the future, but how it's managed, market surveillance authorities in each country, they will be performing some spot checks. So they will be purchasing devices from the market, and there is very strict thresholds. So their results needs to be within 3% from the published results. So there's a whole process in place. So I think, of course, manufacturers can self-certify, but market surveillance authorities will be running spot checks. And I think this regulation tried to tie in some some of the issues we had in the automotive, that you only test once and then afterwards you can change the software. This regulation, it brought a little bit of more continuity, if you like. So if you make a change in the software or operating system, or you change a hardware in the device, you will need to retest again to ensure that what you have published is still valid. And I think this is really key. It shows, it will provide more confidence for the end user that nothing has changed, that the new operating system has not degraded your device in any way.
I mean, as you know, our the podcast is about sustainability and telecom for good. One of my thoughts was about energy saving, which I think is a sort of one logical win. But I think you also indicated, of course, that just purely by allowing smaller batteries to be used is, of course, material gain, I guess, and recyclability. What do you see as the main sort of effects this has from a sustainability or let's say ecological and environmental perspective, the work that you guys are doing?
So maybe I will use a little bit some of the figures from EU on that. So because there is definitely an impact, and they did a very thorough study to measure the impact of the energy labeling. So back in 2020, they did a study based on the existing consumption of devices, smartphones and tablets in Europe. So this is the figures in Europe. And they've estimated that the consumption of primary energy was around 36 watts per year. And of course, this will have been kept increasing year per year. And with the introduction of the energy labeling and some of the savings we have already seen, their new expected limit of the energy is around 23 tetrawatts. So there is a 35 saving of percent of primary energy. And I think this is quite a big figure just by bringing this legislation.
That's amazing number, and I think we will definitely have to let's say that sort of shines a light on the work that you guys have done. As I say, because it's each individual phone, people don't notice as much, but you add it all together, it really does. The numbers are staggering. So that's congratulations on that, and thanks for sharing with that with the audience. Because as I say, it's I have to do some maths exactly what that actually means, so I can do that offline.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And also we see a lot of other countries. And I think for me, this was a really key turning point. So a lot of other countries across the world are planning to adopt the EU energy labeling. And we do see a lot of discussions happening at the moment with several countries. So this will be a real positive effect in the end, seeing this adopted globally and what will be the impact globally. To get some figures on that, I think this will be a really, really good movement and a great initiative pushed by the European Commission.
Well, maybe it's some work, if the GSMA are listening, that's some work that they can do and give us an update on those numbers, as hopefully they're also pushing for that. Anyway, I think we've talked a lot about the energy side, but as you know, we actually were going to catch up with each other early in the year at the Critical Communication Associations event last month. I mean, it means that you're actually, as you say, doing a lot more than energy as well. But, related to the critical communications area, which is quite a hot area anyway, I think, generally in the market, what sort of work are you doing in that space?
Yes, a very good question. So we nearly met at the event, and it was a really, really good, very well put event together, organized by TCCA. So for us, mission critical is a major focus, and we see a lot of initiatives across Europe and also across the world to replace some of the old Tetra technology for radio networks for police or first responders, fire and ambulances. And Tetra has been very reliable, by the way. I think it's been very good, but they're looking to replace it now with 4G and 5G broadband network. And we see the needs are changing in the market. So you want to, when there is an emergency, you want to deploy drones to be able to send drones instead of first responders to these affected areas. And here is the main challenge. Sometimes we say, if you have an issue with the buffering of a video, it can be annoying. But on a mission critical network, if a push to talk takes half a second too long, it can affect a matter of life and death. and it can affect several lives. So it's very important to help assess the services that are important for the mission critical setup. And it can be different from the normal public networks setup and KPIs and priorities.
So these are the sort of tests, additional tests you're sort of doing from that, say, the user experience from a device perspective. Is that correct? Plus back to the network.
Exactly. Yes. So it can be, so some of the main tests, for example, for mission critical setup, it can be push to talk access time. So from the moment the first responder tries to make a call, how quickly the call is established. What is the quality of audio, voice? Can he be heard correctly? Is there any issues? And also on data performance. So it's purely on the first responders' quality of experience. Not so much on the public when they try to make an emergency call, as this is still handled by public networks, but is the private or the mission critical networks only allocated for the first responders, whether it's firefighters or medical emergency staff or police.
So where in the life cycle of such a service do you get deployed? Is it in the initial sort of planning phase to make sure the networks are working correctly, or is it also in live operations as well that you are being used?
So we are throughout the life cycle. So from very early stages, when you want to validate the service or devices, to once the service is deployed live, that you want to keep monitoring and ensuring that the service you've promised is there. So we are all throughout the life cycle of these launches of these mission critical networks.
Okay, so they can optimize as they go along as well, I guess, and improve things.
Exactly. Yes.
So, and that's all good. But what's the plans now going forward for SmartViser? Because we've talked about obviously energy, one area you're busy at critical communications. What else do you foresee in the future, and what areas are you working on?
So I think we will still continue our work and certainly deepening and continuing our work on the mission critical segment across Europe and across the world, and also extending this mission critical work to some areas like non-terrestrial networks and satellite connectivity, because emergency services coverage, it doesn't end where the cell towers end to. So they're expanding to a lot more technical capabilities. And secondly, different areas like into more AI-driven networks and self-organizing networks with digital twins. We are hearing a lot of promises and maybe a lot of advancements where AI will drive some networks. And I think this is definitely good overall for everyone. They will manage to ensure services there. So there's a lot of benefits, but also our role will be to keep AI honest, if you like. Who checks how AI made the right decisions? Or just did they use the right data? Does it have the same impact on the end user quality of experience? So we want to maybe challenge a little bit the AI with some digital twins. Has it optimized for the right things, for the quality of experience? And putting maybe the end users in the middle of it rather than an algorithm deciding whether this was successful or not. So it is just getting some of the impact from the quality of experience from the end user side. And we think this is going to be very exciting. It's just always ensure that AI has made the right decision. We keep human in the loop, or we keep another guardrail to ensure that there is the right thresholds for them.
Interesting thing, I was working till recently in the RAN area, and it's always a game of the contention of resources. It's never, there is one perfect answer. It's always a question of, well, what do you want to optimize, and what, what's priority? Because resources, there is always that, as I say, contention on the network. So that'll be interesting work, because you have to also think of the whole data sets and all the let's say, the various aspects of it. It's quite challenging indeed as well. But the other thing I think for your future, I can't remember when, but maybe you can share with the audience that Anritsu took a stake in SmartViser. I can't remember what level of, but you're working with them, and I guess there's some synergies there to be expected.
Absolutely, yes. So we had a joint press release back in spring, so around April times. So Anritsu is intending to get a stake of 51% in SmartViser this year. And I think we have a lot of complementary work. So it will, I think Anritsu is a world leader in test and measurement implementation. So lab side, network emulators. And from SmartViser, maybe we bring something more on test automation, and we can hand in hand create something maybe to cover the full journey from any service, from lab to live network. And it's a lot of synergies already. We had some use cases presented during the CES in Las Vegas earlier this year, and also Mobile World Congress. Some options like a field to lab, and also some smart measurements and power consumption insights. So we've already have some really good synergies there, and I'm sure there will be a lot more to come in the future as we navigate on how this relationship will look like and how we complement each other going forward.
Exciting times ahead. And as you say, I guess also market-wise, obviously with being a larger organization, they have maybe more coverage and more, let's say, data sets as well. But yeah, I think it'll be exciting for you indeed. So just looking beyond your own sort of daily work, what do you think is the most sort of pressing issues that should be addressed? Now, you could take this personally or from a company perspective, but what are the areas when you wake up at night we worry about and saying, I wish that wasn't the way it is and someone did something about it? Have you got a suggestion there?
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe it's one very hot topic that we all talk at the moment, probably is the AI, and the AI running infrastructure, and AI in private networks, AI in important grid networks. And maybe this technology is moving a lot faster than our frameworks of verifying it or controlling it. So maybe for me is what are we doing to put the right guardrails around it or regulation in place? So how do we make sure this remains mindful? So how do we ensure that this will not cause some issues in the future? So I think for me, it's probably an industry-wide together with security, but how do we manage AI to our benefits and to ensure that we guard it all the time so it always works with a positive impact rather than a negative?
Agreed. And I think it's also, to be honest, the topic that say I'm concerned about. And I guess the way I like to frame it, because I think part of the challenge is that it was called AI in the first place, i.e. artificial intelligence, i.e. it actually has some intelligence, which actually doesn't. I mean, it's a probabilistic technology. So it's actually just calculating the likelihood of something. So actually, I was listening to a podcast. It wasn't a podcast. It was interview of someone, and they were saying that when they train these AIs, it's only ever giving an answer of it's probably X, Y, or Z, or to this percentage. So it never actually knows what a correct answer is. It just says, I think this is what I would do next. So that's quite important, because I think coming back to you controlling, as you're mentioning earlier on, to keep the AI honest, there is another type of technology called deterministic technology, which is actually then making sure things are as expected. 1 + 1 = 2. That's deterministic. That's not a guesswork. It's not 1.999 or whatever. It's a number. In fact, funny enough, AIs don't understand numbers. I don't know if that's an interesting one for our audience as well. So, so the thing is, you are a veteran of the industry, right? And I wanted to ask you is that, given the great work you guys are doing, what is your ask to the industry? I mean, this is the opportunity to sort of, give your view on a particular aspect they could do better, or maybe, for example, where they could cooperate in a better way to actually, I guess, enhance customer experience. And we like to talk about customers, but again, I've seen a number of CEOs, and I don't want to mention their names, who seem to think they're now gods. The god is AI, and they forget the customer. So what's your take on that, and what should telcos do better?
I think that is a really, really good question. And at SmartViser, we're all about from quality of experience and from the customer's point of view. And what I tend to see quite a lot recently is that as an industry, we only will take an action when the customer experiencing a problem. We don't think of, so the customer experience sometimes is an afterthought, or, okay, if it becomes an issue, we will do something about it. But build it very early on into your systems, into your network, into your devices. Measure it from the beginning. Measure it throughout, because it's not only when it becomes a problem. And this will be our ask. Take a proactive effect. And of course, a lot of people say, but AI will optimize this. But I think, as you mentioned, optimization without independent verification or without make sure you feed it the right data. How do you measure the quality of experience? It becomes then just another marketing campaign rather than the true deliverable for the end users. I think for me, it's just take it into account earlier. It's not an aftermonth that you need to think once is a problem, invest in some solutions beforehand.
Well, I'm pretty sure going forward, even though I know we talk about quality of service, as you say, as a parameter and something that can be consumed. And I know that obviously there are in various areas you can buy different quality of service, but I think we will reach that point that, for certain networks, there will be proper SLAs in place, which people will either get compensated for in a positive way or get into trouble for in a different way, depending on how the contract's written, I guess. But these areas that there is money in it, let's say. So hopefully those listening, I know telecom operators and the executive are always saying, "Where's the money? Where's my growth curve?" And I think voice is. You mentioned touch networks. I do think voice is also going to be a more and more important aspect and that you can do some clever things now with the newest networks as well around that. So that's great. As you maybe know, the podcast being on a positive note as well, we think about the sustainability development goals. Where do you align as SmartViser on them? Is it something you actually consciously part of your strategy at all? And
Absolutely, yes. And I think probably we will say on industry and innovation and infrastructure, because we want to ensure that everybody has a reliable digital infrastructure, because I think these days probably underpins other sustainable development goals like healthcare, education, utilities. So they're now all into smart private networks. So we can say the innovation and infrastructure can push growth and smart cities and a more dependable communications across the world. And even in areas that it was too expensive in the past to do something, we see some amazing innovation, even with satellites, that you can have coverage every location, or even with some other initiatives taking place in Africa at the moment, that they can ensure innovation and communication and connectivity. And I think this is definitely something we are aligned with these values.
Good. That's good to hear as well, as you say. Just another aspect that we last year, also this year, we're media partners with the AI for Good Summit, which takes place in Geneva every year. But last year, which stuck in my mind, and we also like to ask this question, is that they said, look, Generation Alpha now is born into the world of AI, which comes back to, let's say, the area that you felt is also concerning or where we need to pay attention. But if you had the opportunity to give a young entrepreneur an opportunity who wants to be an entrepreneur in that space, particularly AI for Good space, any advice for them?
Okay, so AI for Good. So maybe first of all, think about what problem you're trying to solve with AI. So of course, I think what is the human needs in order to solve a problem with AI? So I think that will be the first aspect. So think it of the human need first and how AI helps you solve that. Then maybe measure what good means and measure what is your objective. So what will be good? So what's how you will make a difference? And maybe lastly, keep a human in the loop where it matters, because I'm quite conscious. I think people in this generation will grow up with AI, but we need to ensure that we have a human in the loop when we need to verify that we can trust someone who checks the machine, if you like, rather than blindly trusting AI. And I hear some stories recently when people check important information on AI, like traveling visas, and without verifying it with some trustable sites, you see people ending up in airport and I said, but ChatGPT told me I was okay to travel without a visa in this country. So I think maybe be curious and check actually is this the right approach? Is the information I'm getting is the right one? So
sort of critical thinking, I guess.
exactly. Yes.
But also, I love the methodology there. That's obviously in line with SmartViser. What are we going to benchmark? How are we going to do it?
Absolutely. For us, it's all about methodology. It's always about measurement. How do you measure it? So whatever you decide to do, how you measure your success. And we never say anything in theory, or it's always due to measurements that we either perform ourselves and verify.
Fantastic. Well, sticking with the human aspect of this podcast, this is the opportunity for you now to give a shout out to people doing good, or individuals, as you like. It's really your time. Is there anyone you want to give a shout out to or for?
Yeah, absolutely. I think probably to the whole SmartViser team, and I think and a great leadership, Jill and Xavier as CTO. So, and of course, everyone is SmartViser. So we are behind every innovation, and they're very passionate about improving. It's a true company of enthusiasts. So what we do, everybody absolutely loves it. And maybe a shout out to some to an ecosystem. I think there's a lot of work in the mission critical segment, and especially the work GCF and TCCA is doing on the certification. And sometimes certification work is very unglamorous, it's very painstaking, but I can see there's a great energy in that group, and they're doing an amazing work. And it's something that is quite achievements, if you like, but it is a really, really good energy driving forward. And of course, maybe in the general ecosystem, if you like, or companies that they're really performing and very admirable, I will put Fairphone out of there. I think what an amazing achievement they did into proving that you can make sustainable devices, you can open your own device and still be a business model. So it's good to change the market and the thinking by examples rather than lobbying an idea. So it's, I think they definitely walk the walk, not just talk the talk. So it's been, I think, a very, very admirable and a great shout out to them. It's definitely a great work.
Agreed on that, and lucky enough, that's teeing up. That's one in our backlog. That one that people can listen to. We did interview them as well, as they've also, I think, won twice now at the GSMA Awards. At least certainly been in the top 5. Certainly one year they won, and another year they've also been placed. Let's say. So anyway, it also means now that you are part of the Digitel Talk family. So welcome to us. And it's been a great pleasure and learn how SmartViser continues to innovate and provide the telecoms industry with insights to improve devices and allow operators to provide a better customer experience.
It's great. Thank you so much, Ian. It was great talking to you, and I'm very honored to be part of your podcast. Thank you.
Did you know?
And here is the answer. In SmartViser's on testing on a live UK network using a Google Pixel 10a device running Android 17 on a 5G standalone network, delivered an impressive 15% battery saving compared with a 5G non-standalone network. The same device, same setup, just a smarter network connection.
If you have enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to rate us and subscribe, and feel free to follow us on LinkedIn, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or your favorite podcast app. If you have comments and ideas for future episodes, please send us an email. Thanks for being part of the Digitel Talk community. Stay tuned.